Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_thathat. Okie dokie. Let's get started with some of the news and notes. It's starting to slow down a little bit, so can get our feet underneath us a tiny bit here. Some NFL news, another kind of surprising development here. 49ers defensive end Bryce Huff is retiring from the NFL at age 27. Former UDFA of the Jets, played 6 years in the NFL. So I mentioned already how, the San Francisco 49ers are absolutely going in the wrong direction, and they're losing everything. They're losing a lot more than they're gaining. And now you got 27-year-old pass rusher. He had 46 of 400 pressures, so that's a perfectly fine pass rush rate, 73 pass rush grade, 5 sacks last season. He's gone. It makes me happy, hopefully Bryce Huff's doing good, and he's just like, you know what, I got enough money, I don't feel like getting hit in the head anymore. Good for you, brother. Hopefully that's all it is. But as far as the 49ers, screw them, screw their team, screw everybody that wears their helmet, including Banks, who wore their helmet. Just saying. And the downward spiral just continues to get more and more delicious. Now, if we could just get ourselves to win a playoff game or two, we can actually look down on them and say, ha, you suck, we're better than you. But we got to pull that off first. I'm sure that's coming. 2026, I would almost bet the frickin' farm on it, all right? We're doing it. Officially, David Njoku has been released from the Cleveland Browns, for those interested. He is nearly 30 years old, peaked around 2022, so it hasn't been super fantastic most recently, but who knows, man? 6'4", 246-pound receiving tight end to put next to Tucker. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. Would I do it? No. But I'm not just trying to tell you everything that I want. I'm more like a car salesman. I just kind of show you the inventory. You guys develop your own opinions. I don't freaking care. Some more NFC North news. Jonathan Allen, formerly of the Vikings, signed a 2-year deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. So he is officially gone. As I said, the Vikings are purging, which is, as I said, probably the right thing to do long term. In the short term, though, it's LOL, you suck. Lions out there making big-time moves. They agreed to terms with safety Christian Ezeian, formerly of the Bucs, on a 1-year contract. They don't even list how much because it's probably like $4 an hour. I think that guy gets paid hourly, to be honest. On the flip side of that, for the Detroit Lions, via Jordan Schultz, the Bucs are expected to sign former Lions defensive end Al-Qadin Muhammad. Muhammad had 11 sacks last year as a rotational player and is now poised to have a bigger role with his new team. So yeah, he's been in the NFC North for a while now. He was with Chicago in 2022. Didn't play in 2023, pops back up in 2024. His pressures were pretty fantastic. 26 on 190 attempts and 3 sacks. They gave him some more opportunities, almost doubled his opportunities in 2025. And he had 53 pressures on 353 attempts and 12 sacks, PFF sacks. So pretty impressive. I mean, for an older guy pushing 31, doesn't provide much via run defense, but I mean that is production that is no longer in Detroit. Again, the right move. I mean, look, you can't hang on to these guys forever, but they didn't replace them; they just got rid of them. So they only got it half right. The other half, though, is the more important part. So it's all good. News that we were kind of expecting, but wasn't officially official until it was official. Jordan Schultz. Seahawks are signing former Packers running back Emmanuel Wilson. Wilson had nearly 1,000 rushing yards and 8 total touchdowns in his last 2 seasons in Green Bay. What else we got here? This one I think gives the details. Former UDFA concluded a 3-year run with the Packers by banking career highs. Blah, blah, blah. Wilson is in line to see early season usage. This is a good landing spot. Deal up to $2.1 million. That's all I was looking for. Hey, there we go. Deal is done. I guess I shouldn't have cashed out, but that's all right. Would have been a couple extra dollars. Former Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray is signing a one-year deal with the Vikings per sources. Murray will now become part of the quarterback room that includes former number 10 overall pick J.J. McCarthy. What do you think? Breaking newsworthy? Screw it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I feel like getting wild and crazy. Okay, I'm back. All right, so yeah, Kyler Murray going to be going to the Vikings, one-year deal. We'll see how it goes, man. I think the way that I tend to view things is, and I know to some degree this is wrong, but I'm not really worried about short term. I'm worried about a situation where this could be a problem for us for a long time. I don't want a, Tom Brady and the Patriots, Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs type of situation, or even Aaron Rodgers, whatever. I don't want one of those in the NFC North. I was worried about that with the Lions. Now they're falling apart. We had a couple scares with the Vikings. The Bears, we'll see. They've got some work to do. They got to get the quarterback thing figured out. They got to get a bunch of other positions figured out. But maybe. The Vikings are so far from that, I don't really know what to even be afraid of. If you tell me Kyler's going to be good, okay, and what? And they're going to beat us, okay, yeah, maybe. I don't know. This isn't a team. This is nothing. This is a hodgepodge of individuals wearing the same jersey, throwing balls to each other. It's not a team. This is not their quarterback. And J.J. McCarthy is not their quarterback. And the offensive line is not their offensive line. The defensive line is not their defensive line. They've only got a handful of people that are on that team that you look at and say, okay, these are the guys that we want moving forward in this sort of, everybody's in some kind of a window, a 5-year, 10-year window. Who's in that window? You got a coach, you got a tackle, a wide receiver, I don't know, a couple other things. You don't have a team. The Lions have a team. It's not complete. Nobody's team is complete, but the Lions have a team. A team is like, this is our core, and we need to patch up a couple things here. And if we do that, then we're going to be better than if we don't. But we have a team. We have a vision. We have a thing. The Packers have a team. The Bears have a team. The Vikings don't have a team right now. They don't even have a GM right now, which is probably part of the reason why they did a one-year deal, because they don't want to saddle a GM with a long-term thing with Kyler Murray because he's going to be pissed, and that's going to dissuade them from coming in. Now, if he wants to come in and ride this out and say, hey, I like Kyler, this is working out, they can sign him to a longer deal, but they can't even commit to anything right now. Because every move you make, you got to remember, you are saddling a GM with that, a GM that would rather have been able to be the one to make that decision, rather than come in and say, boy, I wish you would have consulted me first because I'd rather not be dealing with this. So the smart thing, honestly, is probably, again, what they're doing. You purge all the old, undesirable people because you got to woo a GM, although there's none to, I don't know who's left out there. You cut all the dead weight. You don't get into any long-term contracts with people or big money contracts that you can't get out of after, a year or so. And then you do the draft. I still don't understand that. And then you go out and try to find a GM and say, okay, we tried to do as little damage as possible and clean up around the edges here. And so could you want to come in and be the guy now? But we can't even begin to build a team right now. So, no, yeah, maybe he'll be good. I don't know. But I'm not scared of him. I'm scared of good teams. And this is not a good team. This is Kyler Murray being rented to come in and try not to get hurt and try to actually play and win a couple games. And, again, even if they're successful, what does that mean? It means they have another fluke season where they go to the Vikings and then lose, or the playoffs and then lose. And then they start all over again by tearing everything apart and trying to see if they can do it again. Anyways, they got a quarterback now. Let's take a little bit of an early break because we got Packers news coming up after this. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. So former Green Bay Packers tackle Yosh Nijman has officially announced his retirement. After 7 incredible years in that makes it worse. In the NFL, I've decided it's time to officially step away from the game of football. I'm not going to continue to read the rest because it's exceedingly long, but suffice it to say, he's gone. So thank you to Yosh for your service. Got some decent offensive line play, a blocked kick, and seventh-round compensatory pick for him. So, pretty good deal. Former Bears free agents Chauncey Gardner-Johnson signing a one-year deal with the Buffalo Bills. So there's also the breaking news could chill for a minute. Speaking of the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler and what? Packers are planning to host the Arizona Cardinals for a joint practice in advance of their Week 3 preseason game, pending league approval, according to a source. The LaFleur brothers, Matt and Mike, will share the field this summer. Obviously, Gannon was the former head coach there as well, so there's quite a few connections. I'm guessing it wasn't hard to make that connection, considering it is the LaFleur brothers and Gannon who are involved in this decision. Like, you guys want to, yeah? Okay. So that'll be fun. That'll be good to see Packers, LaFleur brothers, and Gannon's old team and that whole thing. Hopefully there's a lot of animosity and hatred and violence and good stuff. Oh, and I guess Kyler Murray grew up a Vikings fan, so there's all the more reason to hate the guy. So there you go. Some additional news regarding Bob Harlan and his passing. A couple days ago, Tom Silverstein said the Packers announced plans for the public to honor President Bob Harlan, who died last week at the age of 89. On Monday, March 16th, the Harlan family will host a celebration of Bob's life from 3:30 to 5 in the Lambeau Field atrium for fans who wish to pay their respects. There was an update here via Matt Schneidman. He says this has been moved to Monday, March 23rd due to forecasted snow, but they are going to have a celebration of life and legacy of Bob Harlan. So that's good to hear. Then I thought this was kind of funny because we just talked about it yesterday. Remember we're kind of rebuilding the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles for the defense and whatnot. And now we officially got Hargrave in addition to other guys that are, not directly from the team, but they are kind of filling those roles. Well, Easton Butler pops up, says Cardinals edge rusher Josh Sweat has requested a trade this week per sources. The Packers and Eagles are both reportedly interested in him. Philly is trying to find another star on the defensive line after losing Phillips to Carolina. They've been striking out trying to get some help over there. Philly's another team that better be careful. They're going to be it's kind of weird. I feel like the parity in the NFL might actually be taking place because a lot of the teams that just seem to be good all the time, I'm looking at and I'm like, I kind of think you suck, dude, a little bit. And I'm wondering if some other teams might be kind of like I'm curious about the Saints. I know they used to be pretty good but they haven't been for a while. The Saints, I'm kind of curious about if they can maybe take a step. The Raiders, I think, have a legit shot at being not bad. The Panthers, anywho, the Josh Sweat was a part of that 2022 team, along with Hargrave. Of the four guys that had double-digit sacks, two of them were Hargrave and Sweat. So not only is it interesting that Josh Sweat is looking to be traded, I have a feeling he would be beyond excited to go to Green Bay and be with Jonathan Gannon. Why do I think that? Well, aside from the fact that in 2022 was his best year, along with everybody else that was with Gannon at that time, he went to Arizona to follow Gannon. And now Gannon leaves, and he's like, yeah, I don't think I want to be here anymore. I wonder where he'd like to go. I know it's not entirely up to him, and Gutekunst is going to have to, make sure that this is, something that we can do. Maybe we give back that fourth that we got for Rashawn in 2027 or something. Probably be a tough sell, to be honest, for it to be that low of a price. He is 29 years old, so we're talking similar age. However, he is not, as far as I can tell, coming off any kind of a massive injury. He did have a reduced amount of snaps, but it looks like it was just due to reduced usage. But even with that reduced usage, he had 12 sacks on the season, which is remarkable. It was the second highest he's had since his 2022 season. It's just freaking crazy. I mean, let's think about this for a second. So Gannon is there. He has his two best seasons as far as sacks. And I think we've looked at this kind of stuff before where, you can track these guys following Gannon around and having success there. But he was there in 21 and 22, okay? So Josh Sweat, 4th round pick, in his first year with Philadelphia. He doesn't play very much. It's whatever. Year 2, 2019, he gets 5 sacks. Year 3, he gets 6 sacks. 2021, Gannon shows up. He goes up to 9 sacks. The next year, he goes up to 15 sacks. Gannon leaves. 2023, he has his lowest pass rush grade since like getting a starting job of 72. It was 76 and 81 the 2 years with Gannon. And then it goes back down to 8 sacks. So his lowest prior to Gannon, right? He never had that bad of a year as long as Gannon was there. So what does he do? Well, he has one kind of bounce back year. He does get back to 11 sacks with the increased amount of usage. Keep in mind, he played 414 and 417 snaps. He played about 600 and 550 the next 2 years. So we're talking 150 to 200 additional just pass rush snaps, not total snaps, pass rush snaps. And he still ended up with less sacks without Gannon. His grade, despite the increased usage, and yes, he did have double-digit sacks, his pass rush grade went down to a 67. So his actual usage and ability or whatever on the field actually did go down for the second year in a row. So he says, I want to go back to Gannon. Goes back to Gannon, 2025. Spikes back up to a 74 pass rush grade. So this is now his 3 highest pass rush grades. It's actually a tie with 2020, but still 3 highest were 2021, 2022, and 2025, his 3 years with Gannon, and 12 sacks. And that's with just 355 pass rush attempts. Again, 550 and 597 were how many pass rush attempts he had with Phil when he had 8 and 11 sacks. That plummeted to 355. He still had 12 sacks with Gannon. His 3 highest grades overall were 84 in 2022, 76.1 in 2021, and 74.2 in 2025. His only 3 Gannon years. He's been in the league since 2018. The guy had a 13.2% pressure rate and 12 sacks. He produced 9, 15, and 12 sacks for Gannon. All 3 years with relatively low usage. He wasn't like just out there every single play like every other time Gannon wasn't there. Josh Sweat, by the way, and this could be used for or against him, actually kind of similar to Lucas Van Ness. I mean, I'm not just talking about like their build, play style, whatever. I'm talking about like today, Josh Sweat had a 74 grade, Lucas Van Ness 71 grade. Their win rates in true pass sets, 20.2%, 20.2%. They were tied. Pass rush productivity, you had Van Ness at 11.7, Josh Sweat at 12.2. They were just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 apart. Sweat was 24th, Van Ness was 31st. So on the positive side, this is like an additional Van Ness. This is another pass rusher. This is a guy that could absolutely work out. On the negative side, in terms of not getting him, we don't need him. We already have Josh Sweat at home, and he's 24 years old. Which, by the way, incredibly exciting. The fact that Micah Parsons talked this guy up and about how good he is, and now you got a guy that is like a frickin' sack specialist in Jonathan Gannon that turned Josh Sweat into a sack machine that is a relatively similar profile to what Lucas Van Ness is. But again, back to sort of the positive side as far as why you would bring him in. Remember, they had a lot of guys on that defensive line. It was a shocking amount of... I remember during the draft, they already had a bunch of talented defensive linemen, and then they go draft defensive linemen. It's like they just couldn't get enough. So it's like, okay, we already have 2 guys. Why do we want to... again, Micah Parsons is who in this like parallel scenario? Hassan Reddick, okay? Josh Sweat would be who if we brought him in? Josh Sweat. Well, what about Lucas Van Ness? Brandon Graham. They had Brandon Graham, too. Brandon Graham is 6'2", 265. Josh Sweat is 6'5", 265. Van Ness is 6'5", 272, so he's much more Josh Sweat-like. But the other interesting thing about it is Brandon Graham right now is 37, right? So if we go backwards, he was 34 years old in that 2022 season when he had 14 sacks. By the way, in the next 3 years, he doesn't even have 14 sacks. He has 12 in the next 3 years without Gannon. But the point is, Brandon Graham was that elder statesman. He was the older guy that was kind of, a veteran elite pass rusher who kind of had a revival of his career, a massive revival of his career under Gannon. Josh Sweat was the young buck. He would have been 25. Van Ness is 24. The point is, Van Ness would be the Sweat, Sweat would be the Graham, Micah would be the Hassan Reddick. And again, look at their defensive line. The idea that you need 2 defensive tackles, 2 edge rushers. Okay, well, Gannon doesn't agree. They had Hargrave as their top defensive guy, pass rusher, which, we could say that's Wyatt if you want. Fletcher Cox being the other guy. There's your Javon Hargrave. Then they had who? They had a third pass rusher in Milton Williams, and then they had their nose tackle in Jordan Davis, who was a rookie that year. So, Brooks can be Milton Williams, I suppose, but we still got to go get that nose tackle. That will get us to where we kind of need to be. By the way, Milton Williams was no slouch, so I'm just saying, a third actually really good defensive tackle is not off the table. This also goes back to what I had said before. If you look at the Gannon defense, and it's like, well, what do we need? Well, the secondary is much more important because it's about, creating more time for these guys or whatever. Yeah, but we prioritize the secondary with bodies. We prioritize the front with talent. We drop 7 guys in coverage to occupy as much space as possible. We have guys that are good enough to know what they're supposed to do. But the point is, we're giving an extra few seconds because these super talented guys up front, who, by the way, are relatively fresh because we have a bunch of talented guys. So even when we rotate, we got talent out there. They have time to get home. But the point is, they have to get home. So that's where we need the primary driver of our talent. Doesn't mean we shouldn't invest in our corners at all. You should try to get as good as you can at every position. But it doesn't do you any good. I'll pick on Rashawn Gary because he's not here anymore. It doesn't do you any good if it's going to take you 5 seconds to get to the quarterback. Nobody's going to hold him off for that long. The only other point that I'll mention here, because it's kind of funny, Brandon Graham's also looking for a job. So if you want to go ahead and trade for Josh Sweat and then pick up Brandon Graham, just run back this whole thing. Maybe see what Hassan Reddick's doing these days. I don't know, 31 years old. Hasn't really been good since since his time with Philly. These are jokes. I don't want to actually do these things. As far as Sweat goes, I'm intrigued by it. Certainly for, it would depend on the price, but certainly intrigued. Anywho, again, I bring you the prospects. You make up your own mind. Okay, let's take our final break. We'll be right back. So there is one thing I wanted to quickly bring up. It's off-season drama time, so I figure it's acceptable to go ahead and say this kind of stuff. Let me see if I can find this quick. So the first place that I saw this was actually from JJ. Now I can't find it. There, I was literally just going to give up, and I gave it one more scroll, and here it is. So he says, I wanted to find it because I didn't want to misquote him. But it says, say whatever you want. I think it's telling that 0 Packers players have tweeted about the Gary trade, including Micah Parsons, who's on this app right now tweeting about which pass rushers he thinks are underrated in the league. The Rashawn Gary thing has been weird for a while, and it is unfortunate every time somebody leaves and then there begins to be speculation. You start, Devondre started to get weird, and Za'Darius was weird, and there's all these weird things that crop up. Usually, not that I'm following a lot of players. I don't, I know Instagram is usually where they post this stuff, and I don't really see it on there. Usually, when somebody leaves, you would see, especially a guy that's been here for a long time and all that kind of stuff, you see some kind of a heartfelt or minor goodbye. Now, this is probably reading too much into things, and I also didn't see anyone say goodbye to Romeo or anybody else for that matter. Again, doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just didn't see it. But I will say it's always been kind of weird. I've always loved Rashawn because he seems like a guy that puts in a lot of work. I also don't know, though, that he never really struck me as the kind of guy that gets along with people, you know? He seems like he's got, I don't know the right way to say it without just using the wrong term that's too offensive, but he doesn't seem like he seems socially awkward in such a way where it's just he's on all the time. And sort of the first couple things that stood out to me, I know whenever there was the locker room things or whatever, he'd be in there like screaming stuff, saying, and he was just kind of weird. And I figured it was just, everybody's just kind of doing their own thing, and he's just kind of doing his kind of screamy thing over there and crying or whatever he's doing, and everyone just kind of like, yeah, whatever, do this, we're showing. But it was just kind of a little minor thing you put in your back pocket. And then the big one that I think we all noticed was when Micah Parsons came in, it was just nonstop gushing over Lucas Van Ness and never once said a word about Rashawn. And I thought, well, Rashawn's kind of the star. He's been paid. It could just be that he's talking up the young guy and like he and Rashawn are like going to get him right. They're going to get him on the right page. They're going to get him, up there with them getting paid and all that. He's just kind of big brothering them a little bit. The one thing that kind of did it for me, though, that kind of tipped it a little bit as far as the scales are concerned, and again, this isn't, it's evidence, not proof. Terrence Parsons Jr. is Micah Parsons' brother. Very active on social media. He's always running his mouth on there. It's kind of like Christian Watson's dad. He's always there. He's always talking, very opinionated, whatever. He'll probably start his own little YouTube channel or something pretty soon. I don't know. But I have seen numerous times he's out there taking digs after he left at Rashawn Gary. Again, I don't know how much he talks to Micah. I don't know any of this stuff. But if Terrence, whose understanding of the locker room can only really come from either social media, television, just like us as fans, or directly from his brother. Again, maybe they don't talk. I have no idea. But even if they talk a little bit, it would kind of give him an idea of who's who and his opinions on people. And Terrence Parsons does not seem to have a very high opinion of Rashawn Gary. So here's one example. I was kind of scrolling through his thing here. And this is probably meant to be a dig at the Cowboys. Remember, he doesn't like the Cowboys either because of all the stuff that went on with his brother. But it's absolutely a inadvertent, at best, backhanded slap to Rashawn Gary. So Diana Rossini said the Dallas Cowboys are not expected to re-engage in the Max Crosby trade discussions at this time, a high-ranking source tells The Athletic. We already talked about that. Jane Slater then, a reporter for NFL Network, says, can confirm. A team source tells me we moved on with Rashawn Gary. Terrence Parsons quote tweeted that and says, always settling for less. Now, again, that probably has more to do with the fact that they're not willing to go out the extra mile to get the superstar. They did my brother dirty that way, and now they're not going to get Max Crosby. It's more of a defense of his brother attack at the Cowboys. But that's, again, very clearly a backhanded slap because the less in this scenario is Rashawn Gary. He's literally the less that he's talking about. Then we have another example. So somebody by the name of Daddy's Lambo, I can't make fun of his name because it's a similar theme to mine. It shows a video of Micah Parsons running past Rashawn Gary to get to the quarterback. Now, to be clear, Micah Parsons would run past a freaking corner to get to the quarterback. But the caption is, WTF is Rashawn Gary doing? Micah said, see ya, as, he flies past Rashawn Gary. Matthew S., quote tweets that and says, during the season, I was always wondering why Micah was coming out and being over-the-top celebratory of Lucas Van Ness. That's what we had talked about. Never said anything about Gary. This video is why. A guy who plays as hard as Micah had to be irate with Gary's effort or lack of. Lucas Van Ness busts his butt out there. Again, Terrence Parsons comes in and he says, charts don't lie. And he posts a chart. Now, of course, every time I click it, the thing is so small. But the chart is from PFF, evaluating edge rushers win 1v1. Now, there's a pile of human beings over here. There's just a massive pile. Then there's kind of like a smattering that kind of juts out from there. And then when you go way up to you got to zoom way out just to get out there. You have Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. Those are clearly the top two pass rushers. It's not a competition. However, the guys that are kind of jutting out, there's two that are kind of out in front of even the out in front guys. So there's Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. That's like on So the main smattering is like Earth. Then there's some guys on the moon. Then there's guys on Mars, and then there's guys on Pluto. And Pluto is Garrett and Micah Parsons. The guys on Mars are T.J. Watt and Aiden Hutchinson. The guys on the moon, there's quite a few. Will Anderson, Joey Bosa, Trey Hendrickson, Jared Verse, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Daniil Hunter, Max Crosby. Really, really good guys. You know who else is in that list? Lucas Van Ness. Lucas, by the way, the X and Y axis, the X axis is double team percentage. So shockingly, he's very high on that. Then there is grade over expectation when not versus double team. So when on that axis there, Van Ness is out there with Crosby, Hunter, Jared Verse, Trey Hendrickson, Joey Bosa, etc. Smack dab in the middle of Earth is Rashawn Gary. This is the post that is being shown. And again, this can't just be about his brother. Because it's not just like, oh, look how good my brother is. The entire point of what these two guys are talking about is Rashawn Gary is freaking lazy. Micah Parsons is doing all the work. He must be frustrated with Rashawn. Van Ness is better. Van Ness, blah, 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 blah. And Micah Parsons' brother posts a chart showing Micah Parsons out here, then Van Ness on that kind of next tier. Well, technically Hutchinson, Watt. Then the next tier, Van Ness. And then Rashawn Gary just right in the pile of human beings. So that seemed to be more of a direct shot at Rashawn Gary. There's another post from Titletown Talks. Well, first of all, he's Micah Parsons himself. Am I not following him? I should just follow him. On March 10th, so this is just 2 days ago, says a rusher's ability to finish is what separates him from the rest. Anyone can play for 2.3. Most sacks happen 3 and above, unless someone wins super quick, which is rare. Titletown Talks quote tweeted that and says how Micah was looking at Rashawn Gary gassed on the sideline playing less than 60% of the snaps all season, while he had 0 OTAs and was training camp and still played more snaps than him. And it's a picture of somebody looking obviously very disappointedly at somebody. Terrence Parsons retweeted that. So again, he obviously is of the mind that Rashawn Gary is a frickin' bum and doesn't belong in Green Bay. It was of no help whatsoever to Micah. There's another person who quote tweeted Micah Parsons. Jaden Official says, ain't took his foot off Gary's neck since we shipped him off. Build the statue right now. In other words, he's implying Micah Parsons is beating the crap out of Rashawn directly. And Terrence Parsons, his brother, quote tweeted it or retweeted it as if to say, yup. In fact, looking at Micah Parsons, that same thing, Tyler Brooks says, Micah Parsons, if you could only pick one trait or skill to evaluate edge talent, what would it be and why? He says pursuit and effort. Effort being the main quality that Rashawn was not necessarily, let's say, praised for, at least in that final year. So anyways, all this to say, and it gets tiring after a while that there's this constant, like, carving out of toxicity, I guess. And I don't know that it was massively toxic, but it just seems like things tend to sour. And I'm not saying this is a Green Bay thing or anything like that. I'm guessing every locker room has these kinds of issues, but there's just this constant need that would be unbelievably frustrating as a GM or a coach to have to deal with this nonsense all the time of like, Rashawn, what's going on with you, bro? Like, oh, I'm tired, man. My legs are getting tight. And that's what, it almost looked like he pulled something when he was running that one time. He pulled up all weird, just kind of slowed down, but like had a weird like gear down kind of thing. It was like, you all right, dude? But I mean, you would think if it was just cordial, but, you know, he's just getting a little old or something, you're going to show a little bit of respect. This seemed more like, get him the hell out of here. Now, again, with that said, I'm looking at Jaden Reed's thing. I don't see anything about Romeo Doubs. And he did tweet out, let's get it to Malik when he went to Miami. I'm not saying anything about Dobbs. But again, these guys, I'm guessing they're mostly on Instagram. I don't know what's up with these freaking kids, but Watson hasn't done anything on here since February, so maybe. I'm not going on Instagram to check. I don't care that much. But look, in the pursuit of trying to build a roster that isn't just talent, but has the right mentality, has the right attitude, you're always trying to find the guys that need to go. And I never thought Rashawn would be on the other side of that. I know he cares. I know he's passionate, but for whatever reason, either his body gave out or his mind gave out or something gave out. I don't know what it is, but he just was not able to put out the effort. And he's always been more of a power rusher than a speed rusher or whatever. So, I mean, when the goal is get there as fast as possible, the game kind of is getting away from Rashawn a touch. I'm sure he liked it more under Mike Pettin when it was all about compress the pocket and squeeze and all that. He could do that. He's not really a run and chase type of guy, I guess, but whatever. It is what it is. It's like I said with Brian Gutekunst. I don't judge you based on your career. I'm judging you based on what you are today. It's like when Rodgers leaves and it's, how could you do that to an MVP? Because he's not an MVP today, bro. He's not a Hall of Famer today. He's not a Super Bowl champion today. Okay, those are things that happened in the past. That's not what I'm making a decision on today. And Brian Gutekunst, look, the 2022 draft class is heavenly. But that was a long time ago. And so we make different determinations. Matt LaFleur, I love Matt LaFleur. I will always respect what he's been able to accomplish here in Green Bay. Some of the teams he's put together, some of the offenses we've had have been remarkable. If we have a bad 2026, I'm not going to judge him based on the 2020 season. That was a long time ago. And same with Rashawn. I didn't like it when we drafted him. I learned to really appreciate Rashawn. His play started to diminish. I think he was always a little underrated by fans, but not so much so that this is clearly just, especially if the attitude and the effort are not there to the point where his own teammates, especially his own like edge rusher teammates, are like, yeah, it's good riddance. Guys like that got to go. I'm sorry. And if Dobbs was one of those guys, then Dobbs has to go. If Wicks is one of those guys, he's got to go. I mean, there's certain guys if you don't like Micah, I don't give a damn. You suck it up. You know what I mean? But you got a problem with Jordan, go frickin' tell your mommy. I don't want to hear it. But, it gets to be a point where if your production is not what we need, then you had better be a good team guy. And if you're not, then we can't have you being a net negative on this team. So just a thought. Again, I appreciate Rashawn. I like Rashawn. I can't wish him the best while he's in Dallas, and I won't, but I'm glad he's back with Kenny for as long as Kenny's there. I guess they're keeping him. I don't know. And hope they have some fun and very little success. But anywho, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good rest of your day. Holy crap, it's 7. I'm all proud of myself. Like, yeah, we're flying through this. Yeah, we're going to get done early today. It's 7 o'clock, man. I just record podcasts all day long. Ugh. All right, off to do Packernet After Dark. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.